following breaking news out of Israel, where Naftali Bennett says he is ready to join a new coalition government to unseat Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
The Unveiling, revealing what's hidden in plain sight.
All right, welcome back to The Unveiling. Tonight's going to be a special episode. We have a guest. If you've been watching our church lately, you know who this person is, but it is Jelena McClellan, and we've got some interesting topics tonight, and so we're just going to go ahead and get started.
You did good with my name, Gage.
Is that right?
You got pretty close.
Awesome. And as always, TJ's here. Hey
Hi,
everyone.
TJ.
Gage he failed to introduce me.
Look, I'm not a good introer. So how do you say your name if I didn't say it right?
Jelena.
Jelena
McClellan.
Yes.
Okay, good.
See, I told you did good.
Good. All right.
So, Ms. Jelena, what do you got for us today?
Well, Kelly and I have been talking about the end time unraveling before our eyes, really. I think we can all see what's happening and how this is starting to line up and the dominoes are starting to kind of fall. And if you haven't noticed, I have an accent, and I know you guys know where it's from.
Mm-hmm.
I am originally from Germany, and I have been feeling like I noticed some parallels between what's been happening in Germany during the World War II time and what's been happening here in America. So it's kind of disturbing to me because I feel like, shouldn't we have learned something from our history? But it feels like we haven't. Like we're making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And unfortunately, I think part of it is because we want to deny our history instead of, learning from it.
Yeah, we all know that saying, if you don't learn history or know what you've been through, both as a person and on a grander scale like a nation, you're doomed to repeat that history.
Right.
Yeah, and we know good and well that a lot of the happenings that you're referring to, I mean, you said you're from some Germany. What specifically parallels are you talking about?
Well, okay, I came to America in 2008. Okay, so I came here in May, and then you guys had an election in November of that year, and there was some change happening. And one of the first things, honestly, that I noticed was the gun control, because that was something that happened prior to World War II as well. And so that was just kind of something that, I noticed it was being pushed, but it wasn't really a big issue to me back then because I didn't really understand the depth of it yet. Yeah. But then more recently, with what we've all been through in 2020 and what's happening right now with the V, I guess is what we're going to call it, right?
The V.
The V.
The jab.
Those are two different things, by the way.
No, it's the same.
It's related.
Yeah.
Related, but they're still two different things.
Okay.
But so back in World War II, there was an identification of a certain people group. And I feel like we're starting to see something like that coming back. Those are some of the perils that I feel like I'm noticing.
Okay. So what, more specifically, you're talking about the Nuremberg race law that was created in 1935.
Right.
It was laws that were implemented by the Nazi regime.
Yes.
And that was to identify and have a card carried on the person that was a Jew.
Right.
And was identified as a Jew. And similar to the
jab card?
The jab card, yes. I don't know if people are aware of this, but here recently a couple articles were floating around saying that the EU Parliament has just approved a digital COVID or thing.
VPass.
Yes, VPass.
A VPass.
And they're going to implement that in a lot of different things. And I think, we don't like to say segregation and separation, but it is,
That's what it feels like.
it's what it is.
Right.
It's exactly what it is. I mean, it's already been implemented in ball games, back in sports. We got several articles. If y'all want to question it more, we can pull up the article itself. If anybody's watching and wants to comment, be like, what article, we can have Gage put it on the comments or up on the screen itself. But it's happening. They're literally separating those who have been jabbed from those who choose not to be jabbed.
Right.
Which is very similar to what happened, which is where I believe Jelena is talking about.
Right. Like, actually, the first thing that caught my attention, it was not something that is already established, but it was a question somebody phrased on Facebook asking if the jabbed children would be separated or segregated from the unjabbed children in school, because this lady wanted to know which school to sign her son up for next school year. Mm. And I thought, oh my gosh, we've been there. In Germany, the Jewish children were separated from the other children. Mm-hmm. They all went to school together. And then as these race laws came more and more, I read today when we were doing some research for this show that there was a young girl, she was Jewish, and she came to school like on any other day, but that day her teacher called her a dirty Jew and spat in her face. Mm. I mean, you can go one day, and you're part of the group and everything is normal. The next day you're being an outcast like that. Yeah. And so when I read that about the children, I thought, oh my gosh, what are we trying to do here? Because we've done this before. Mm-hmm. And like you mentioned, they had to have these ID cards, and a red J was stamped into theirs. And I told Chet earlier, I knew this because I learned this in school, but I forgot all about it. If you didn't have a Jewish sounding name, they gave you a middle name that clearly identified you. So if you were male, your new middle name was now Israel, and if you were female, your new middle name was now Sarah.
Hmm. That's crazy.
Right?
That's crazy. What's even crazier to me is the level of attention that people are putting on. Like that question, was she trying to figure out where to put her kid who was vaccinated or not?
Honestly, I'm not even sure which side she was on.
Just a general question.
Just a general question. And then it dawned on me that we're seriously at this point that we're having these conversations and these discussions. And then when, like you said, these articles that are circulating about ball games in, I think it was at least 2 different states that we saw, that's just, it's crazy because you're creating a second-class citizen again.
Yeah. You're intentionally dividing people based upon the status that they choose to be.
Correct.
And it makes no sense. And they're going to say it's for safety, it's for health, it's for this or it's for that, for the greater good. I know a man that said a lot of things about the greater good that I've been doing a lot of research on because she's Jelena told me to. She said, look up these 15 articles really quick. Hang on, let me send them all to you.
I didn't say really quick, and I was doing it all throughout the day.
Yeah, but I learned about him pretty quick. And his speeches, I actually looked up his speeches themselves, in English, of course, because he didn't, not that I'm aware of, spoke English.
I don't know.
But the person I'm talking about, in case nobody's picked it up yet, is Adolf Hitler and his campaign from the start. 1930s, whatever that end number is, 33, 32, his rise to power, and throughout that time, it was a lot of pleasant for the people.
Yes, it was.
Safety, health, and we will rise again.
Yes.
And that's all we hear nowadays about everything going on from the government shutting down. It's all we hear from the politicians, the newly appointed political heads that we have. It's nothing but it's for the greater good. It's for the greater good. You just said gun laws. Has anybody seen the most recent, what do you call it, press conference? The most recent press conference from with
where
Biden.
he's talking about the government?
Biden,
yeah.
Been talking about those guns again. And if you haven't seen it, go check it out. You need to hear what your president says every time he opens his mouth. It is enlightening. it is you hear some things and you're just like, wow, what have we done? But anyways, back on topic as far as interesting individual known as Adolf Hitler's and his campaigns. What was, I want to know from your perspective, what was so captivating about him? Because it clearly, the words were clearly enough to move a nation, just like it's doing now.
Right.
I mean, people are scared of everything going on, and they're just piling right in. They're separating their children. They're separating themselves, and willingly, like a lamb to the slaughter, walking forward to a clear set of, they want to be ruled. I guess. I'm not sure. So can you enlighten me a little bit on that?
Well, if you look at where they came from, Germany just lost World War One, and apparently the terms of the Versailles Treaty were pretty humiliating as far as, all the blame was on Germany and what all they had to be paying back and how they had to do it and all this kind of stuff. So people were already kind of ill about that. I mean, you lost a war that you started. That's typically not good. Then they had the Great Depression that everybody was dealing with, but the unemployment was unbelievable. And so you had the financial crisis, you had the economic crisis, and here he comes. There's already anti-Semitism in Europe. I mean, if you look at history, in, was it 1492, Queen Elizabeth kicked, or Isabel of Spain, she kicked all the Jews out. So you've had that all throughout the time in Europe, and I actually saw today that Hitler wasn't the first one who made them put that arm badge or whatever they had on. It was something that was in Europe for centuries, and it had actually just been eliminated not that long before Hitler put it back in place. But he's writing all of those emotions. Just like you said, we're hearing it now, building back better and everything for the greater good, and we're going to make us strong, and we're going to do blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. So he was talking about the laborer, the worker. He wasn't catering to the rich and the famous. He was catering to the little man. I remember stories when we were in school that were told that for the first time, people were able to buy a cruise. They were able to afford a vacation like that. Now, they may have never actually went because his money was funneled into war machinery and what else. But you thought, hey, I'm going to get a cruise. I'm going to take my family on that. So if you look at that, and then when he came into power, he created work. For example, the Autobahn, there's strips that my parents told me about that you can take out of the meridian. Like you can remove it and it's an airstrip. Things like that. That's actually pretty cool.
You talking about like on roads and stuff? Oh.
But you wouldn't know it where it's at, if you're not in on the secret. But
I was going to make the point too, like as you're describing that, and I've heard this comparison before, but like, and I'd probably be stoned for saying it here, but he really sounds a lot like what Trump did. Just kind of starting from some of the grassroots working man, not catering to the political heads and the people that have been in the swamp, like he always said. But
I can see your point.
It sounds like him a lot sometimes.
Yeah.
No, let's just face it. There was a lot of people that said if he rises and calls on anybody, they would support him in whatever he chose to do. And very very dangerous talks, or as some would say.
As some would say?
I'm not sure where I was going with that. I lost my train of thought. I'm going to be honest with you.
Well, in my opinion, Hitler was an evil genius.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Especially the evil part.
Yes. And, I think you and I have talked about it a little bit today, or just briefly mentioned it. There's a whole bunch of occult stories swirling around about him. People called him the Antichrist. We know he was not the Antichrist, but he was definitely operating in the spirit of the Antichrist.
Yeah. What's that? What's the scripture?
Yeah, it's 1 John 2:18, and it is, and I'm not going to pull it up there. I can't do it, but it's, Dear children, the last hour is here. You have heard that the Antichrist is coming, and already many such Antichrists have appeared. From this we know that the last hour has come.
Yeah, so from that, we can clearly tell that there's a lot of individuals throughout history who operate within that spirit. And, let's just say Hitler's time is a more prevalent, more fresh experience from the last time that he was let loose to do what he did, because this man created churches, the Reich Church, and that is if that's not the like perfect representation of what's going to happen as well as what did happen, because this is true historical facts that he conformed Protestant churches.
Yes.
Completely conformed them. All of them, there was not all of them or most, but several of the churches themselves had sympathizers where it got so bad that they just went on ahead and started to remove those crosses and put swastikas up there. And it went so much, first it was out of fear, of course. Mm-hmm. There was a fear factor in their decisions to change their teachings, but it doesn't change the fact that he created a religion around him and his hierarchy.
And he was worshipped.
Yeah, like straight worshipped.
Yes.
So if that's not, if you're still at home thinking Antichrist spirit, that's not even, well, yes, because it is exactly what it is. It happened, and it's going to happen again when the true Antichrist is let loose on this earth here in the next tribulation. So, you got 3.5
Right
years from at some point.
Yep.
From now and then, but I just want to link real quick that the Reich churches, they actually were influenced churches by the government, right? So they had the government come in, and they started to put restrictions, change this here, do as I say there, and it got so bad until they just caved and gave in, and a new church was formed. However, where are we at today? Let's make it a more up-to-date thing. Where are we at with the government telling us how to worship today? Are we also falling into the same lines as what they did back then, and are we shutting down the churches because the government says so?
I would say so.
I would think we're right there at that, I think.
Not just being told how we can worship, but y'all remember a couple years ago in Texas where the pastors had to hand over their sermons before they could preach them?
Yeah, I remember that.
I didn't hear nothing about that.
Mm-hmm.
It was anything, was it homosexuality, I think, was not allowed to be addressed, and so they were censored.
Really?
Yes.
But what?
Yeah,
This is the first time hearing about
I think it got shot
have you
down
been?
or reversed or something. But
Yeah.
I do remember. Yeah, I remember was it a governor or what was it? A
don't
mayor
know.
of a
I
city?
think it was
a
a
mayor.
mayor.
I don't think a governor.
Yeah, a mayor of a city
would ruin that
demanded
career.
that all of the, or at least certain pastors or something, had to turn in their sermon notes beforehand, and he was going to censor and filter through it.
Good Lord.
So if you're asking if we're there,
Yeah.
I would say we're there.
That's incredible.
Yeah, especially if you listen and keep up with what's going on in California. I mean, and I'm actually glad to see that they've actually stood up to some of that
Right.
stuff with Governor Newsom, I believe. But he has been tyrannical, in my opinion. It's been awful. It doesn't surprise me because I know that's the direction that we're headed. But just to see it
Play out like
play
that.
out like that,
Yes.
it's crazy.
Yep. And anyways, I just wanted to bring that up and mention that the Reich Church and what is kind of like where we're at today, being governed and censored and controlled and told what to do, what not to do. Show up to church, don't show up to church. If you're going to show up to church,
Don't
can't have
sing.
more than 10 at first. And then that got out of hand. And then they were like, oh, well, now you can't sing because somehow singing
Spreads the V worse than talking or
yeah,
something.
some
So
craziness.
let me ask you this, Jelena, from your opinion, based off what we've seen so far with how the government has overreached up until this point, it almost seems like COVID is, it's starting to get better. It's not as bad as it was, and now we maybe seem like we're coming back out of that. What do you think is going to happen from this point forward to get us back to that place? Do you think there's going to be another wave? Do you think that is it going to be something else? Maybe not a virus this time. What else is going to transpire before the tribulation begins and it's everything breaks loose?
Based upon historical, looking
Well-
back and trying to figure out their little step-by-step process up to the point, we know you're not a fortune teller. So,
No, but we read the book, right?
yeah, exactly.
We kind of know what's going to happen. We just need to see through all the smoke and mirrors and see what's actually happening. I think the indoctrination of the youth is going to play a huge role. Those were some of the things I sent you guys today with the Hitler Youth.
Yeah.
And if you read those, you see like they were incredibly organized, and it always reminded me of Boy Scouts. And I'm sure that's how it started in a form, but it went crazy because they even told, or the Hitler Youth basically encouraged the children and the teenagers that were involved in those groups to tell on their teachers and on their families and on their churches. And, you know, we already know there's several states right now having bills passed banning certain kind of teaching in school. Because we don't want our children indoctrinated.
Or adding to, like changing the genders over, for example. How did we go from 2 to now there's like, what was it, 40 something?
Yeah, I can't
Possibly
keep
more
up
than
with
that.
it.
I don't know. There's an entire medical, what is it called? A bachelor's or some sort of degree in gender studies now. Like there's a
Really?
degree in gender studies.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, we've been hearing that it's been happening at our colleges. And then there just recently was an article where a deflector from Korea said that it's not even that bad over there. Like after seeing what
Really?
happened here at one of
Yeah.
our Ivy Leagues.
You know what? I seen that there was a video or something for talking. I was going to try to find it because it could kind of went along with the vein that we're going with tonight. I'll see if I can find that.
Is this in the stuff that you sent?
No,
Okay, thank God. I was going to be like, oh no, I missed it.
no, it's not the stuff I said. But I've heard that for years. You know, I didn't go to college here. I went to college in Germany, which I'm not sure if it's much different at this point, honestly. But here I've heard for years that there is the liberal agenda being pushed in the colleges. And so when I think about that, and I think about what might be happening in our schools, and we've seen that last year during the pandemic and the homeschooling, where there were several school districts. I haven't heard about it in Alabama, but I know there was one in Tennessee where the teachers basically said they didn't want the parents in the room. They didn't.
Yeah.
It was none of their business
Yeah.
what was being said in the classroom setting. And if it's virtual, then now my living room becomes your classroom setting. I completely disagree with, because I'm the parent and I have every right to know what to try and teach my children.
Oh yeah, definitely, 100%. That you know, they got a bunch of videos online about people recording on their phones when they're
Right.
supposed to be muted, but the mic's still working. You know,
Yes.
so they got little videos like that. They'll have like there was actually one I guess you call it a meme or a picture or a joke in general, but they're like, they don't want any more pajamas while you're teaching your kid, or they're teaching your kid. They say no more pajamas, and it continues and says, what are you going to do? Send them home? I mean, what can they do? I mean, really? I mean, that's their house, that's their home, that's the place that they live. How are you
Right.
you're going so far as to tell them what to do, what to wear, how to show. I mean, they do that already.
Yep.
And they're just doing it more and more. And now they're bringing it into the home, and they're going to tell the parents they can't be in there. They're just testing every second of the day that they can
And overreaching. And
to see how far they can overreach.
you know, there's still, thank God, there's still a lot of good teachers out there that, you know, are kind of like a line of defense for our children, because we're not there all the time and we have no idea what all is being said and done.
Yeah.
You know, I remember one year, 2 of our kids were talking about how one of their teachers, they were watching CNN every single day. And I'm like, okay, do y'all ever watch Fox? I mean, if you want to watch one, then watch the other, because your job is to teach them how to think for themselves and how to think, you know, critically thinking.
Yeah.
Not whatever you think and whatever your opinion is. That's not what you're supposed to be telling them. You can keep
Yeah.
your opinion to yourself.
Yeah.
So if you want to show one, then show the other and let them form their own opinion.
Yeah, I have a grandmother that all she does is watch the news. I don't know where old people get off on making their whole life about the news. I don't know if it's a general thing or maybe it's just with her. I only really have her as an example, but every time it starts to rain outside, suddenly a tornado's coming. You know, that's
Okay.
what the news says, that it's happening across the state, but I mean, it blows it up, and that's how they get ratings. It's viewings, because people don't understand is the news is a business. It generates profit
And
and
fear.
money and fear. And fear is the motivating
It's driving
factor.
everything right now.
Yeah.
Logic went out the window because fear.
Yeah. And that fear is control. If you can
Absolutely.
make the populace fear, you can to fix their problems.
Well, look at World War II again. Look at the German Reich.
Mm-hmm.
It was fear. It was worship of this man, especially in the youth, because that's all they knew.
Yeah.
If you see how, if your superstar were to come, like, I don't know whether it's football or anything, and he would come and shake your hand, or you would get to see him driving by or whatever, you'd be pretty pumped. And with this indoctrination that was happening, it was their little youth group activities were priority, even over school and church. So Hitler made it very clear, like, I don't care about your church. That's not where I want you. That's not where I need you. I need you to listen to this. And there were even board games that he used to push his ideologies on children. Well, look at cartoons these days.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All the Disney shows. Everybody knows that Disney does that little, what's it called, subliminal message thing?
The programming.
Yeah. Programming. I like that. That's funny. But that's interesting about the games. I didn't know he did that. He even went that far and do all that.
It was all about indoctrination.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I do find I don't know if it's the slimiest or sleaziest, however you want to say it, is going after the children. It's one thing to say, hey, adults, do this because it's what you should do. But it's another thing to teach the children that do it, or else if you don't do it, you're a terrible person, which then reflects on whatever the parents choosing to do. And you're the child, but they're not. They're going above, because there's what is it, Gage? Have y'all heard about the news, the articles, and or the World Health, whoever doing whatever about? I can't.
Yes, I've
find
heard about
my
that
words right
article.
now. The article says that is it okay, or should kids, or can kids go over their parents straight to get the vaccine without their acknowledgement or say?
So actually, at the end of last year, I think it was in November or December, there was at least one state that was trying to pass a law where the age of consent for a V or for a jab could go down to 12. And then there was another state that was trying to lower it even more. So, and we read that article, my husband and I, because it said that the school is not allowed to tell you, the doctor is not allowed to tell you, and when you get your explanation of benefits or whatever the bill you get from the insurance company that explains what all they paid for, this is not going to show up on there. So even if we didn't read that book right there, The Seed War, and we didn't know what's happening and what's behind the jab, you don't have a clue that's going to cause. My child might have an allergic reaction, and I won't know what to do. The doctor won't know what to do, because guess what? Your records don't show that you ever had that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just complete overreach. A child should not have to make these decisions. They're not capable of making these decisions. And I don't know why the government thinks that they have the right to make decisions for my child.
Yeah, well, that's why I said they're trying everything they can, seeing how far they can push it. Because they're not going to come out right and say, well, nobody did. Even the Nazi regime, there is a slow fade, a slow progression towards complete control.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're seeing today, is a slow progression towards complete control. Because ain't nobody telling me that I can't show up to church. And that thank God that I'm in a church that says, ain't everybody says the same voice. Ain't nobody telling me how or where or when to worship or not to worship. So thank God for that. I'm really grateful. And, so I'm passing it back over to Jelena. Ran out of things to say again.
Well, I think you watched that movie, The Wave, that I told you about?
Yes, The Wave. That was I like that. It was a really interesting concept.
It was really horrible quality. If you guys know what we're talking about, it's from the 80s, I think it was.
Yeah.
It's only about 45 minutes long, and it's based on some kind of an experience that a teacher...
Happened in California.
Yeah. All right, look at that.
Yeah, said it happened in California. One of the teachers, and I don't remember which school it was, but he started his own little classroom experiment, and it was a very interesting, and I liked how he brought it back together, because even he, pretty much he modeled his room around the Reich/Nazi regime setup in government. For example, he made everybody feel a part of something. They felt like they owed him for making them feel like he was a part of something, and he used that to build structure, power, and influence And it was the exact same thing that you're talking about with these, the youth indoctrinations, telling them
Right.
to tell on each other, tell on their parents. Everybody's trying to help each other, but at the same time, they're trying to
You're either
help
with me
each
or you're
other.
against me.
Yes.
That's what it turned out to be.
So it was a very interesting little concept. The Wave, if y'all haven't seen it, check it out. It's on YouTube for free. That's always good. You should check
Yeah.
it out for the pure.
As far as the wave goes, it when I watched that, my thoughts were, yes, that's exactly the way people act.
Yes.
As soon as somebody that stands up with some type of confidence or authority stands up and starts, saying orders or has some kind of order to them, people will just blindly follow them. And to me, it goes to show, it really goes to show me exactly how the Antichrist is going to,
Exactly.
deceive people and get into following him, because people do it so easily. We're like sheep, and they're led to the slaughter. I mean, that was my biggest takeaway, because it just shows how easily people do that. And it's like, when you're on the outside looking in at something that can possibly happen like that in the future, you're like, man, nobody's that stupid. How did they do that?
Yeah.
But then that show demonstrates just how easily people will fall in line. And it made me start thinking, even as us as Christians, like, I kind of in a way agree and understand that mentality when it comes to wanting somebody to tell me what to do or wanting somebody to serve. You know what I mean? Because like even with my relationship with God, sometimes I've been like, God, take my free will away. I want to do what you want me to do. I'm here. I'm going to serve you. And I think that inside of us, we're going to follow something, and we're going to follow and be passionate about something or some kind of ordeal. And I don't know, when I watched that movie, I was like, yes, that's exactly where the people act.
Yes.
Yeah. The first thing that he said to his wife, the teacher, went home, and she was like, "How's your day?" And he explained to him what he was doing, or explained to her what he good Lord, explained to her what he was doing. There we go. And he's like, it's like they want to be commanded. It's like they want someone to tell them what to do and give them orders. And he was right on the money, because guess what else says that? The Bible.
Yes.
It says that you will be a follower of something. Let it be Jesus.
Yes.
Pretty much. I really wish Gage would this is what it says. But we're not that there yet. So.
Well, one of the things I was a question I was posing to you guys earlier was about Jacob's trouble, because yes, we all know that the Jacob's trouble that is spoken of in Jeremiah 30, I think verse 7, we're linking into the tribulation. That's what we all have been taught. That's what we've been looking at. But especially today, when I was getting ready for this and reading all this stuff, and I thought about when he was working for his father-in-law and he wanted his bride, and he worked for 7 years and he got the wrong one, and then he had to work again. Now, he didn't have to work the whole full 7 years before he got her. He worked 7 days, but he had to finish those 7 years. So he did 2 times 7 years, and from 1938, when the persecution really started, until the end of the war, is 7 years. So in my opinion, and I might be completely wrong, but in my opinion, it's almost like a prelude to what is going to happen. And I think that's why we're seeing those parallels that we're seeing between Hitler, a type of Antichrist operating in the Antichrist spirit, and what's going to happen again, because we all know we got to be pretty close. So some of those same steps we're seeing already taking place, like with the V-Pass and things like that, where if I have to identify like that to go to a museum or a movie theater, then you can have your museum and your movie theater.
Yeah, and that's where I don't think it'll ever be mandated to the point, because even we have a couple studies where our pastor has brought out the World Health Organization's 2031 plan. And it says specifically that those nations that cannot be forced to get it will be heavily regulated, and their entire lives changed unless they are able to get that identification. So,
well, back during the German Reich, if a Jewish person was caught without that, Star of David on their jacket or whatever, there were heavy fines for them. There was punishment.
Yeah. That's just insane to me.
How many people do you think have, as far as the United States goes, or even the world, have that same mentality that we have? Like, no, if you're going to force me into this, then I don't want no part of it.
I don't think a lot have that.
Oh, I think the first thought they have is, yes, what you're saying. I don't know. I don't want none of it. If I go to the movies, oh, no, I don't want to go to the movies no more. But then, boom, that same decision, that same thought does not follow through over time. It's a quality of life change. They've been given so much their entire life.
Exactly.
And it's just been such bliss that at the first sign of any issue or trouble, they're going to fold over time.
You guys talked about it on the show already, that it's not like we're going to all line up and say, I want the mark, I want the mark. Oh, no, we're going to be deceived into taking the mark. And why? Because...
And fear.
Fear, but also we're so used to what pleases us, the pleasures of this world. I mean, we don't want to give that up.
Yep. Food is good.
You're not ready to go and farm yet?
Food's too good.
But when she told me, at first they were like, no, we're not going to do it, and it's just not safe, and they were just looking at the medical point of view, which that's already a huge,
good Lord,
big red flag right there.
If people did any amount of research ever on anything that people told you to do, you'd realize even on a medical standpoint,
this is completely
crazy.
Yeah. But when she told me that, not enough people have been jabbed yet, and so we don't really have the freedoms yet. But once enough have been jabbed, then we're going to have... I'm like, what freedom are you talking about? Because you don't have any, period, if that's what you think. And she said, well, we're going to be able to go shopping again. We just have to show our identification. I'm like, what about the rest of the people?
I would have linked that immediately to the...
Exactly.
Can I even go that route?
Go that route.
Well, I would have linked that immediately to, it sounds like the mark of the beast. It literally says,
exactly.
You have to show this level of identification in order to buy, sell, and trade. I mean, it's in the Bible from however thousands of years ago that it was prophesied. So we're there. We're on the precipice of it, but we're there. If you can't see the signs, or you choose not to see the signs, because the signs are there,
exactly.
and you have eyes. If you choose not to see it, that's one thing. We're doing our best to bring it to light in the most censored way possible in order to stay online.
And what's bothering me so much, like seriously, I was taught this in every grade in Germany. From 5th grade on, we read it in German class. We had literature about it. We had to read novels about it. We learned about the book burnings and those that were censored, and freedom of speech didn't exist anymore, and all this kind of stuff. Then in art class, we went over some of the artists that were persecuted and censored and had to flee because their art was all of a sudden forbidden. In economics, we learned about, what does this actually mean? What did that party do? What was the economic system like? And the inflation, the hyperinflation that happened, all these kind of things, they're kind of talking about right now too. Yeah. And in religion, in Germany, we actually have religion in school. So I was a Catholic back then. So
they have religion in school?
Yes. Well, they did. I don't know if they still do, but they did.
Wow.
My religion teacher was my priest.
That's pretty cool. I mean, 5,000 times better than what we got going on.
Yeah. But so, there obviously we were talking about, why didn't the church do anything? And like you said earlier, well, there was the Reichschurch. But so all these kind of things, we discussed them, obviously in history. We discussed it year after year after year in every possible, I think math and chemistry might have not talked about it, but or maybe PE, I don't know. But other than that, pretty much every class covered that. And so when I'm looking at Germany right now, and I'm thinking, have you not learned? Like, what is wrong with you? Did you forget everything? Because first there was the identification and the segregation, then there were the cattle carts and concentration camps. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying we're at that point, but we already know what the Bible says. We're going to be persecuted.
Yeah. And when you just said that, when you just said, have you not learned? I was thinking back in Genesis and on when I'm reading the book, everything Israel does wrong, just back to back to back to back. And I'm like, have you not learned?
It's this cycle.
When you said that, I remember me thinking the same thing. But yeah, I mean, those who don't know their history, which clearly, I mean, everybody has been taught on this through all. I would imagine. I don't know what they're like nowadays because I've been out of school for like 10 years. But everybody's should know, but they don't go to the what the government did. They don't do the lead up to it, the specific things such as gun laws. They don't get into detail about the things that.
In Germany, we did a lot of that.
Oh, okay.
We talked about how Hitler rose to power and all these kind of things. So back then, they did a pretty good job.
Oh.
I can't tell you what they're teaching now because I haven't lived there in years.
Because you got to get out of the room when they're doing it, right?
Possibly. Yeah,
Yeah. See,
you're right.
work that in there.
Yep.
But yeah, just one quick little cool bit of information. The start of the Sardis church, it was the Protestant Reformation. It actually came out of Germany.
Yes, it did.
You know, ironically enough, with the whole Hitler thing. Germany was actually right before that a heavily Christian, very Protestant, very big movements started from there. So, you know, the fact that some other big movements started from there, I think we can all definitely say that where the devil or the Antichrist likes to mimic.
Yes.
And big moves of God like that, you know, specifically in that area, that's where the devil tried to put his movement. And, you know, I think...
Little did he know that he was going to fulfill prophecy.
Oh, yeah. And that's
Because in 1948,
Yeah.
Israel became a nation. And if it hadn't been for all this stuff they went through...
anything that the devil does to make... How's it going?
Everything he means for evil, God turns around for good.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
he does. But it's, the parallels that I'm seeing, I'm like, wake up. Please wake up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't think America's going to wake up.
Oof.
No, I don't.
Well, based on this book,
Not
we
with
know
that
it.
attitude.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. Depending on what preacher you're listening to.
There you go.
I mean, everybody. You know, there's a lot of preachers that's saying that there's another great revival coming. God's going to turn it around. It's going to get better. But that's not what the Bible teaches. It doesn't teach that.
Honestly, I think when I hear there's another great revival coming, I don't think it's numbers. I think it is those that are waking up are going to have a great awakening,
Yeah,
like spiritually speaking. The revelation that they're going to have and the understanding they're going to get, I think that is going to be great, but not number-wise.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And since you were talking about how Germany was like pretty Christian, I was offended when I moved here and people were talking about how Germany is not a Christian nation. I'm like, what are you talking
Really?
about? It says I'm Catholic in my birth certificate.
This piece of paper called me a Christian.
Well, obviously I wasn't born again yet, so I had no clue. But it like really bothered me because everywhere I went, it's like, "Have you been saved yet and born again? Have you been saved yet and born?" I'm like, "I'm a Catholic." Yes. No.
I even honestly, before I actually read where the Protestant Reformation started, because it was in a video, one of the videos that I was looking up on YouTube, it said this very thing that I just mentioned about the movement of the Sardis Church in the beginning of that back in 15. I don't remember the dates exactly, but thousands. I guess it would have been thousands of years before that was a mighty move of God, and making that Reformation, and then suddenly, boom, something else out of Germany on a spiritual level, major, happens, but it was in the opposite direction. And I was like, wait, what? So I had to do my little research with the Sardis Church, and I was like, sure enough, Martin Luther was from Germany. It was
Yeah, he was.
that bit of information just went in one ear and out the other, and I'll admit that. And so until today, I also did not know that Germany was pretty Christian.
Used to be.
Yeah. So.
Used to be. When the last pope got elected, or whatever they call it, that's, I think, when I've seen the most participation of people considering themselves Christian. Because it was just interesting. And that movie, The Illuminati, just came out too. And so...
There's a movie called Illuminati?
Yes, Dan Brown wrote a book called Angels and Demons. So it's either called Angels and Demons or Illuminati, one of them two. But it was pretty... It was just... I thought it was pretty cool back then, because I just read that book, and then here comes the Pope thing.
You know, I didn't actually read the book or watch the show. I mean, it seemed interesting, trailer-wise, but I just never motivated me enough to watch it, so I'm just going to nod and agree with what you say.
Okay.
Yes, very interesting.
Very polite. Thank you.
So there was a few. Can you read those comments from there? Some people added a couple of things.
people will follow mob rules out of fear of being separated or singled out. That's true.
Yeah.
I would absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to get at earlier is that it's like even people that claim to be Christians and claim to have faith in God, it's like as soon as one thing happens, it's like they have so much fear built in that they lose all the faith. They don't look to God. They don't remember what the Word says, and that's how people. That's one of the ways I believe the Antichrist is going to deceive people is with fear into taking it or
Well, look,
whatever else.
in the beginning of this whole situation, I always thought that this was not the mark. And the reason why, I just thought we were not quite there yet. And I thought that it's going to take more. But I thought this was a dry run. Absolutely. Because you could clearly see how far do you have to push the people to get what you want. And
Right.
it didn't take that much.
It didn't.
Not at all.
It's like
Apparently,
we-
it takes a little bit of fear mixed with a little bit of shutting in, mixed with a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And suddenly you got followers out the wazoo as long as you give them more money, which is really what the government's doing here lately. I don't know
Yes.
about you guys, but I'm pretty sure I heard nearly 30% of all the money that America has created over the span of its existence, nearly 200 plus years, 30% of it has been printed and created within the last, a year or two, 3? So an insanely small number. So percentile wise, I mean, that's ridiculous. They're clearly moving towards inflammation and what was it? What do you call that?
Hyperinflation?
Yeah, hyperinflation.
Yeah.
And they're making a move for that. So let's just put together a little bit of a step-by-step process for
Okay.
Hitler's taking over, and let's see if it matches up with what's going on nowadays. So first off, we got the hyperinflation. Is that a part of it?
Yes.
Heavy gun restrictions and/or control.
Actually, the funny thing was, I always thought that he like completely disarmed the German population, because why else would you not stand up to a tyrant unless you're brainwashed? But then I read that the Jewish people were not allowed to have guns. They were disarmed. And regular German citizens, even Hitler Youth, depending on the rank you had, were allowed to have a weapon. Like if you were considered an enemy of his party, of his ideology, then you couldn't have one. But if you were a follower and supporter, then there were ways for you to get one.
So then look out in the future. If they say something about you have to get the jab in order to legally own this gun, then we know exactly what's coming next.
Right.
At that point.
It's a pretty scary thought.
I mean, it sounds logical. I mean, it may be it's a motivating factor, and it's just been talked about by the president. And I mean, I'm linking the two now that you've mentioned it. So I guess I'm going to be on the lookout for that. And when it happens, I'm going to be like, see, America, this is what happens. But
That's what happens when you erase history.
yeah.
Yep. Now, the hyperinflation, there's we learned this in school too. There was a lady, she had a wheelbarrow full of money, and she put it outside because it was so worthless, and the wheelbarrow was stolen and the money was dumped on the ground.
Wow.
That's crazy.
It was really bad. I mean, there was like millions of, one bill was like over 1 million Reichsmark because it wasn't worth anything anymore.
Yeah, that's how Venezuela is right now. I had a guy I worked with in Texas. He was from Venezuela. He actually was pretty successful over there before their economic downpour and complete governmental collapse. But he said he owned a nice little mechanic shop, and he said that the new regime stepped in, took over the police department, and had them forcefully take over his business because it generated so much profit. And he said he was getting shot at every day. And the moment that he took his kids out to school, and he went back to his car, a drive-by happened, and that's what motivated him to come over here.
Wow.
And he moved all of his family over. And since then, I keep hearing that $1 over there is insane. I think it's called rupees or something like that, whatever their currency is. And it's an insane hyperinflated money. Like, you're rich if you go over there and
Not
you
bad.
make anything over like $15 a day. You're rich.
Well, the forceful business takeover also happened in Germany. If
Really?
you were a Jewish business owner, then the Nazi regime forced you to sell your business for nothing to German
So
people.
we're seeing a lot of connections and
yes.
parallels between economic downpour, regime takeover,
Right.
and Antichrist spirit.
And now think about that. The Bible tells us that a loaf of bread is going to cost a day's wage.
Wages, yeah. So, that's crazy. I mean, if you haven't seen it now, after it's been so plainly explained to you, you just don't have ears to hear. And need to pray about that.
Yeah. And don't forget in your summary list of step by step, the indoctrination of the youth.
That's just the worst.
And it wasn't, so it was the youth, but he also, I told you Hitler was an evil genius. He organized people in such a way that everybody was watching everybody. Everybody was watching everybody. So, like you didn't know, are you a member in the party, or did you just see what I just did? Or maybe I should tell on you first.
Yeah.
No, wasn't there one state or one city that had like a tip line where you could call in if you saw people violating the...
I think a lot of places did that. If you see something, say something or whatever.
Yeah.
And it applied to...
violation of social distancing and...
Right, yeah. If
things
you see
like
a
that.
party or something, call on them. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But that happened. We've already been there. We've done this. And here we are again.
Wow.
And people are so deceived. They really believe, they buy into, it's for a greater good, and I'm doing this for other people. So here's something that I have question and nerves about this. So the jab does not prevent you from getting the V, correct? It's supposed to give you less symptoms. Like if you get it, then you're not going to get as sick.
It makes you less, I believe, less receptacle, or what's the word I'm looking for? Receptive. So it's it's percentage-wise, you may not get it.
Okay, but you
because
can
you're
still
too
get
much
it.
Yeah, either
strong.
way, there's been tons of cases of people that's had it and still got it.
Yes.
Oh,
So-
yeah. Oh, yeah.
But and you're still contagious. You can still
Right.
give it to somebody else. So when they're saying, I'm doing this for my family, how does that make any sense? How are you doing this for your
It
family?
don't, because they've done no research. And
No.
it shows in the fact that, I'm just going to roll my sleeve up and stick my arm out
Oh.
because they tell me to. It takes 2 seconds to Google and sift through the insane amount of crazy stuff on there to figure out the truth. And even if it's you spend an hour or two looking, that's an hour or two of your life and your family's life that you're investing. Surely to goodness, 5 minutes worth of searching online, whether or not, and learning about something is worth your life and your family's, especially immortal life, because we may even be factoring that in. So,
Right. Even if we don't just want to talk about the medical situation, there's more at stake. And I don't want to risk it. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Oh, yeah. Ain't no point in risking it. Your body was created in the image of God, and let's just face it.
Yep.
It was given everything it needs. If something breaks down on your body, it has the capability to repair itself.
Absolutely.
That is something that everything in nature has. I mean, self-repair. I get that people are scared to death, especially the older and weaker generation, but I have a Bible that says that Jesus Christ healed people.
Yes.
He also cast out devils. He performed miracles. And I think that if you're going to believe any of the Bible or any of Jesus's, the
I believe it all.
Christ powers, abilities, it's faith and understanding. Faith and understanding that Jesus Christ still performs miracles.
Right.
Which a lot of people I know we hear that it don't happen no more. Like the
Yes, it does.
Baptist church are always like, well, miracles were a thing that the apostles did back in the days. No, it still happens. I'm a part of a church again that it happens almost every time we get together. So if you want to do some research, find our IP address and come on down. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Gage would be very upset. But yeah, so.
But Gage, you asked earlier, what do I think might be the next phase or the next step?
Yes.
What happens when they come after our jobs?
Mm-hmm.
You already have places of business incentivizing getting the jab. I think Kelly even mentioned this. Was it a rock band or a punk rock band in Florida that was incentivizing? It was for young people, for teenagers, and the ticket for somebody who was not jabbed was $1,000. For somebody who was jabbed,
Yeah.
$18.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've already seen there's been companies and CEOs of companies that have said no jab, no job. So you can't even get it. In some places, you can't even get a job unless you get it.
Right,
And that's just going to keep getting worse.
You know, if an employer feels like, hey, I actually feel like this is a good thing and this is what's going to keep people safe and I want to give you an incentive, okay, that's one thing. If you start to turn it around and say, if you didn't get it, you can't work here anymore, that's a whole nother story. Because if I, you know, whether I want the incentive or not, that's still my decision.
Right.
But when you come after my livelihood, then I'm going to have to make a hard decision.
I know a couple guys at work even that says, we presented that very question to them. We said, well, what if our jobs demand it? What are you going to do? And several of them have just went on ahead, and they're fighters. They say, we're not going to get the what are we calling it? The jab.
The jab.
I'm not going to get the jab. We don't want to risk it. But as soon as their livelihood, their families, their jobs were put into question, which is, let's just face it, comfortable and what we've gotten used to having,
Yes.
was as soon as that was disrupted, they went on ahead and said, well, I guess I'd have to get it at that point. And I said, well, that's your decision to make, but if you're going to make that decision, don't take 2 seconds to think about it. Do your research,
Right.
and that's from the medical standpoint. And then I went on ahead and mentioned, the spiritual aspect of it, because you're not making a decision just for your mortal self
Exactly.
and life. You're making a decision potentially about your immortal soul as well, and the livelihood of your family. Don't be an American Christian that's worried that they can't go out on at Friday night and watch a movie, because guess what? Honestly, and just throwing it out there, stepping a couple toes here, you should probably stay in and read your Bible with your family.
Or come to prayer meeting.
Or come to prayer meeting.
Yes.
Teach them about the Bible. Spend that time that you would go to that restaurant and spend $300 for your food. Stay in, cook, and then explain to your children,
Right.
how to cook. Do the things that we did back in the day.
But there's going to be tough decisions that we're going to have to make. For me, because I am from Germany, my family's in Germany. If they get to the point where you cannot travel, like right now, I think you can still travel, you just have to quarantine for a certain amount of time. And you don't have to take the test before, you have to take a test there, and all this good stuff. Okay, fine. First of all, I need to have enough vacation to do all that, which most of us don't have the length of days to do those things.
I've got 1 day.
But if we get to a point where they say you can't come unless you have this V pass, because that's one of the articles, you can now travel, like those that are going to have this V pass can travel freely within Europe amongst all the member states. So for me, that means I will not go back home to see my family.
Yeah.
And, that's a tough decision
Yeah, that's
to make.
a big decision. I was going to say, whether this is the mark of the beast or not, is decisions like this one eventually
are going to come.
Yes, they're going to come, and that's what's going to separate the real people from the non-real people. You know what I mean? Like even what this whole V has shown over the last 2 years or the last year and a half that it's happened. It's separated and the wheat from the tares in a lot of ways. It's shown who's real and who's not, and who's got grit and loyalty to God and who's not.
And you see the great falling away happening just right along with it, because how many people did not come back to a church after the church opened back up?
Exactly.
Yeah, for real. I mean, a lot of locations did online stuff. How many people actually tuned in? I mean, honestly, we could check that. There's traffic and whatnot, but how many
people? Can you
people?
see how long they watched, or can you just see that they popped up?
Yeah, you can check to see how not each individual person, but you can see like what the analytics are, see how long people are watching videos.
But that's just a side thing, unimportant. But what's important is the fact that we've seen ours, we've seen what we've put out, and as faithful as our church is, it can always be better. But imagine these churches who don't even show up. Imagine these churches who don't even put anything out. Because I know several of them who of churches in general that I've been a part of in the past, and I've seen just go on a complete and total loss of congregation. And that creates loss of revenue for them with their tithes, because if people go out the door, they don't pay their tithes anymore.
Right.
What are they supposed to do? Just not obey the Bible at that point? Because that's a part of the Bible, to meet in church, give your tithes, be part of a congregation set up structured as in the first and original churches of the Church of Acts. We have a clear set of rules and guidelines that the government has already controlled the majority of America. And it makes no sense to me, because as soon as you send all that stuff about the the Reich Church and how it was taken over slowly, indoctrinated over time, just like we've been with
Yes.
government, slow coercions by the government in order to get to a point to where it was worshiping a mortal. And I don't. People are going to be like, well, I don't think that we'll get that bad. We're headed there.
Yes, absolutely.
We're en route as far as government control goes.
Well, half the country already worshipped somebody.
This is true. This is true.
So,
Well, as we're getting ready to wrap up, Jelena, have you do you keep up with like any of the Israeli government politics and the stuff that's happening over there? What are your thoughts on some of that?
I have been keeping up with it a little bit. I haven't quite dug through the mess that they recently created.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite
Been pretty crazy over there.
Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah.
The government
in the
in Israel.
government, yeah, for the
That's
first
insane.
time.
And personally, like, I'm wanting to watch how this is going to play out. So one guy is going to be the prime minister or whatever his
Yeah,
position is for
for
like 2.5 years.
2
and then,
years, and
then the
then-
other guy's going to take
yeah.
it. Like, really?
Yeah, Bennett and then Lapid. Bennett has it for the first 2 years, which it's to me like it's hard enough to understand our own government. To try
Yes.
to understand another countries is a whole nother deal.
Even though we've been taught it our entire life. But
Yeah, but I mean, just the what understood from it is it's so diverse in the new government that they're not going to be able to get anything done.
I don't think
It's-
so either.
It's
Yeah.
going to be completely,
Tied up in
chaos.
politics.
You know, they're very similar with this government. That what happened here is not that you had anything good to say about the candidate you chose. You just didn't like the other one it was
Yeah.
that bad that
Yeah.
you just did whatever you had to do to get him out.
Yeah.
Yeah, better. What's the saying? Better the devil we know than the devil we don't.
Yeah, and so I
Tuesday.
think that whatever's going on over there, I think it's leading directly into whatever's coming next with
Yes.
the war. Whatever's coming next in this prophetic timeline God's playing out, whether it be the war of Gog and Magog or just the rapture or setting up the Antichrist.
Right.
That I think is going to play a huge key in whatever comes next. And so we always say the Bible even says watch Israel, keep your eyes,
Yes.
pray for Israel. We always got to keep our eyes on what's going on over there because, like I said it last week, there's constant news happening every day that our news don't ever cover. Like there was a terrorist attack today, that 2 or 3 people were dead and a bunch of people were injured. And I think that was in Germany actually. Did you see that?
No, I did not.
Yeah, I believe it was in Germany. It was one of the Muslim guys that shouting that phrase that he did. But it was a knife attack. 3 people dead, and like 6 others injured. And but anyways, things like that, and movements with Russia and the wars and rumors of wars. It's all happening. We've got to
Yes.
keep our eyes on that.
Wow.
But
Well, it was fun with you guys.
yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Jelena. You'll probably be seeing more of her because I don't know. I think it hit off pretty good.
Yeah.
So
And the whole reason Jelena took over today, and she did an awesome job, is because Chip and Kelly were on vacation with their family, and it was their anniversary. So
anniversary,
so pray for them. They're on the way back. They'll be back here next week.
also congratulations, you two. Hope you're having fun under the sun.
We miss y'all.
Yeah.
All right.
We pulled it off somehow.
Yeah, it wasn't great. It might have been great. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like it went smoothly. Anyways, join us next week.